Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Ammar, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to be joined by Kirk Dando, the founder and CEO of Dando Advisors. Kirk has spent the last 29 years coaching more than 16,000 CEOs, including over 20 Earnest and Young Entrepreneurs of the Year. His clients have enjoyed tremendous success, including over $17.2 billion in successful exits, that's mergers and acquisitions and IPOs, and over $80 billion in total enterprise value growth across his clients. With almost 30 years of experience, Kirk helps fast-growing companies scale successfully, avoid predictable leadership pitfalls, and unlock the next level of growth. He's also an author in his book, Predictive Leadership, which outlines his battle-tested strategies for avoiding growth-killing mistakes. Kirk, welcome to Founders Future.
Thank you, Ammar. I'm excited to be on. One point of clarification: I haven't coached 16,000 CEOs. It's CEOs and their teams and their executives.
Okay, fair enough. I appreciate you clarifying
Yeah,
that. Still,
absolutely.
still a massive number, nonetheless. I always like to start from the beginning. So take me on a little trip down memory lane to before you started Dando Advisors. What were you doing at the time? And then what was really the motivation behind starting the company?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've always been super curious about is just leaders. I grew up around friends whose families owned businesses. Some of them were wildly successful. Some of them struggled. And I was just always curious about what was the difference? What was it that the successful ones were doing that maybe the unsuccessful ones weren't? And so that started me on a journey of just curiosity and learning. After college, I went to work for Arthur Andersen, where I got to continue to feed and fuel that curiosity. And I got recruited out of there to be the CFO and ended up being the chief operating officer for a company that we fairly quickly grew to over $1 billion in annual revenue. And it was quite the story. We ended up going on and selling that business. And the CEO sat me down and he said, "Kirk, you've got a unique ability to look into the heart of a company. You should go help other CEOs in their companies grow." And at the time, and this was just my personal journey, I was a little bit offended by that, even though it sounds like quite the compliment. What I thought he was saying is I should go be a consultant. And
Hmm.
I personally, for me personally, had not had a lot of positive experiences. I'd had coaches and consultants come in and tell me my problems better than I could articulate them. And they would make promises of the difference that they were going to be able to make. And I would look at them and I would say, "Hey, if this doesn't work because we're dysfunctional, we don't take your advice or whatever the case may be, do we have to pay you?" And they would look at me like, "That is a bad question." But really what I was getting at the heart of it was, are you going to build conditions of trust with me? Are you standing on real scars? Are you going to be able to see into my blind spots? Are you going to be able to build conditions that can handle the weight of the truth and be that friend? Because I knew I didn't know what I didn't know.
Hmm.
And I could never get anybody to take me up on that. And after we sold that company, I had some friends say, "Hey, would you come sit on our board? Would you come be part of our journey?" And rather than doing that, I said, "Why don't I just come alongside you and your team and get more under the hood than I could otherwise as a board member?" And I got what I call as a helper's high.
Hmm.
And figuratively speaking, I've been getting, that helper's high or getting high for the last 30 years. That's what was going on before I started Dando Advisors. And it was really birthed out of something that I wasn't intentional. It was more of just wanting to work out or work through the things that were hard for us as we were growing, harder than I thought they needed to be. What I found out was there was a lot of patterns and repeatability that happens to a company that's scaling, that if someone would have just come alongside me and helped normalize that journey for me, would have really helped me get back in the game, get my head and heart. As Tim Keller says, success has a way of going to your head, but failure has a way of going to your heart. And I think as an
Hmm.
entrepreneur growing something, you experience both of those. And I was looking for someone that would come alongside me. And so I got to be that and have been that for the last 30 years and feel very lucky.
That's awesome. I love that quote, by the way. Success has a way of getting to your head, and failure has a way of getting to your heart. It's very true. And let's fast forward a little bit to today to give the listeners more context into Dando Advisors and what that looks like. Help me understand, who would you say is your ideal customer? I know you work with CEOs and their teams, Are there any specific verticals that you like to focus on?
So there's not any verticals or industries specifically. It's companies that are scaling quickly.
Okay.
Most typically they are venture backed or private equity backed because they got a first or second time CEO and they're scaling very quickly. And they're playing at a high level. Now I work with all kinds of different companies, different industries. But most typically, the pattern is they're growing quickly. They understand they don't know what they don't know, and they've got access to great resources, mentors, board members. They're part of usually CEO groups and those kind of things. But what they want is somebody that can come alongside them and help them, so they don't have to spend IQ points solving point problems that have been solved before.
Yeah.
They want to spend their IQ points innovating, growing, and they're playing at a high level, and they feel that they can afford, not from a financial standpoint, but from a growth standpoint, somebody that can come alongside and help them.
Now, when you're actually working with these companies, what does that look like? Walk me through the different offers, the different services, what a client engagement looks like.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm most proud of is over the last 30 years, 100% of my clients or the people that I work with it starts as a business relationship and ends as a friendship. And it's 100% word of mouth. And when I'm working with a company, I believe that a company is a legal person. It has its own tax ID. Obviously, it can't speak for itself. It doesn't go home to dinner at night with its family or watch its kids' games during the weekends, but it is a legal person. And so when I'm working with an organization, I'm the company, that legal person is essentially my client. Now, my first contact is with the CEO, but I'm always thinking about as there's people that surround that organization, board members, investors, vendors, all those things that are there to advocate for the health and well-being of the business. But oftentimes that gets confused or lost. So when I start working with a company, I come in and do a deep dive. I do really going on a listening exercise, listening, what is the business telling me? So essentially, if I could take the business out to dinner, what would it tell me? And part of that is having several confidential conversations with people in and around the organization, doing a deep dive, looking at different processes, collateral material, financial information, a holistic approach. And I prepare myself to meet with the CEO for 2 days and let them see the company through my eyes. And the goal of that time is to identify, get clarity on what are the goals. Every
Mm,
CEO in the organization has goals and promises that they make, promises to themselves, to their family, to their investors, their customers. What are those promises? And then I set about and saying, we usually identify anywhere from 3 to 5 higher level issues or opportunities that if we don't address, those goals and those promises are going to be at risk and most likely probably not going to happen. And I
mm,
don't do it as a scare tactic to motivate them to listen. It's more of taking them on a journey where they experience that, kind of like putting them in a flight simulator. And at the end of our time, we have usually anywhere from 7 to 10 really meaningful action steps, roadmap, if you will, on how to grow and go through those issues that sometimes we're avoiding. Sometimes we're lying to ourselves, telling ourselves those sweet little lies that get us distracted and threaten our ability to lead. And from that, then we decide that's step one. Step two is we decide how I can help in that journey. I don't have any long-term agreements with anybody.
interesting.
Going back to what I said earlier is if I'm going to deliver and I'm going to add value, then we keep going. And if I don't, they've got to have the right to stop it at any moment for any reason. They've got enough things tugging on them, pulling on them, and misdirecting them. They don't need one more thing. And I'm sensitive to that because I've sat in that seat. I've walked in those shoes and I know how lonely it can be.
That's powerful. So it sounds like you're working with them in a one-on-one capacity. So you have the deep dive, then you have the 2 day with the CEO, really clarifying what are their goals, what are they looking for, and then you create the 7 to 10 action items, so to speak. And then after that, it's customizable depending on their needs and how you can best help. Is that fair?
Ex- Exactly. And I'm also working with their executive team. I'm working with
Got
all
it.
the constituents that are there to serve the business. So I'll end up coaching people on the team as well. And I get into all kinds of different activities because I'm there to help the organization grow and keep those promises and achieve those goals.
Yeah,
And so it's really is a holistic approach. I found that kind of scoping it tightly to fix one thing, usually what ends up happening is you find out there's other parts of the business that need attention. And so I've shaped it that way from the very beginning to be able to speak into all those parts of things and earn that trust. And if I can't, they've got the ability and authority to stop the engagement.
I'm super curious your perspective on this because I've talked to hundreds of coaches at this point and consultants, and the idea of scalability when it comes to a fulfillment model is something that comes up a lot. When you think of your model, have you ever thought about doing some sort of cohort-based training where you can bring on more people at a time? But I understand it's nuanced because it's you can't deliver as much value to the client when you do that. But I'm curious your perspective on that when you approach the idea of scale when you want to bring on more clients.
Yeah. So there's a couple ways I've thought about scale. One is scaling the financial part of things. And so what I do commonly is I'll invest time and money and end up with an advisory equity position oftentimes. And so scaling financially, that's one way I'm able to do that without hiring a bunch more consultants and coaches and sending them out there for billable hours. I don't bill by the hour. It's really a different way I bill. But more what I'm interested in is scaling my experiences and sharing those things because I have been at the elbow of so many people that have had major breakthroughs and major breakdowns. And I desperately want to share those experiences. And I've recently launched a podcast. It's called For You Leaders Podcast. And you can find it on any of the Spotify, YouTube, any of those. Go to our website and find it. But so scaling that, that's how I'm scaling the experiences and
Yeah.
the things that I've learned to get those out there. And I really am not trying to withhold anything or trying to angle it so people are like, man, I've got to work with him to get more. I really am trying to just put it all out there. And I've been very fortunate, very blessed that just through word of mouth, I've been able to be and keep adequately busy and helping the people that know can trust me. And so scaling is, I think about it a little bit differently in different
Mm,
components.
yeah, that's super interesting. I'd love to touch upon the 100% word of mouth because it's very rare that I'll bring somebody on and they say 100% of their business comes from word of mouth. I'm curious if, because I had a coach on earlier this week and he mentioned that referrals and word of mouth were a large part of what he was doing, but he did it wasn't predictable and consistent for him. And he was looking at other avenues and exploring other ways of generating more business. I'm curious for you what your experience has been with that and if there is anything else that you're looking to explore.
Well, it sounds overly obvious and embarrassingly simple, and it's not. But someone early on when I was getting started, I was like, really enjoyed it, and people came to me, and I'd had experiences, but I knew that wasn't going to extend beyond the handful of people that I knew. And someone told me two things, and they've proven to be very true: is Kirk, the people that you're supposed to work with will come to you, and that sounds mystical and nice, but it has proven to be very true. And he said the other part of that is if you go and do a great job, if you're a really great listener, if you're not trying to sell them something, but you're trying to build a friendship and build that trust and you have good guidance, the CEO community, although it's large, is intimate and it is lonely. And it's not lonely because they're so special. It's lonely because you get judged in a vacuum. You oftentimes get judged out of context. And if you can be that person that kind of helps guide them and their team members and build conditions of trust with their team too, which is not easy to do because sometimes you're hearing things that you've got to protect appropriately, but at the same time, you've also got to be able to expose those in a way that is safe and holds trust that they'll share. They want to share. People like to share good things that are happening in their life. If you know of a good restaurant, if you know of a good place to go get a deal on a bike or something like that, it's the same thing. If you're providing guidance and real value, that's how allowing them to scale, keep their promises and goals, you will likely build a business that is predominantly word of mouth.
That's powerful. That's and obviously the results as the results speak for themselves. It's like you say in your LinkedIn bio. It's like the numbers tell you the story that you need to know.
Yeah. And interestingly, the numbers don't tell the whole story, right? They're the vanity metrics that people want to know that you actually are standing on real scars and you've done something. But the real story is the relationships that are built behind it,
Mm.
behind those numbers.
I'm super curious at this stage in your career, when you think of the future of Dando Advisors and you think of what success in the future would look like for you personally and professionally, paint me that picture.
For me, it would be at this point in my career is to try to get these learnings into the hands of people that can really use them, as many people. And that's part of the reason for the For You Leaders podcast, sharing lots on LinkedIn and really trying to empty this vessel of everything that has been poured into me And I've been granted the opportunity to learn from and grow from and try to be much more of a river than a reservoir. And so it's not, obviously I love working one-on-one and with teams, and that's something I'll always love and do. And that's what gets me up in the morning. But the growth for me is more about spilling this out than it is taking more in. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah. So would you say you have any particular revenue targets? Is there anything that you're aiming towards or not really?
I probably should, but I've never really ever put revenue. I thought revenue would always take care of itself if I took care of the people that were trusting me. And it sounds good now. And I can say that after 30 years, my first 3 to 5 years or whatever I was doing this, I didn't know if that was going to be true or not. And it was a bit of anxiety producing. I would tell somebody that's in those first fresh years, think big, start small, move fast, and make sure that you're adding real value. I think the coaching industry is getting ready to get disrupted or is getting disrupted pretty significantly by what's happening with AI. And I think it needs to. I'm excited about it. I think you can, it sounds harsh, but I think if you sat in an executive role, you know how hard it is and you need people, but you could be a failed executive today and a coach tomorrow. There's really no
Mm.
regulation on the industry whatsoever for quality.
Talk to me a little bit more about that disruption that you're seeing and maybe some tools that you think would be valuable or have been a game changer for you specifically.
Yeah, I think AI is absolutely a game changer. There's a wide spectrum. There's people that are fearful of it, don't completely understand it, to people that I talk with that think they're going to build $1 billion business with no people and kind of everything in between. But the fact of the matter is AI, people don't want to say this out loud, but it is replacing people. That's not a threat. It's just a fact. The Big Four firm in London has reduced their entry analysts by 35% because they're finding that AI can do it faster, better, and in some cases cheaper. And but the reality of it is there's things AI can't do. AI can't tell you when you're lying to yourself. It'll answer your question, but it won't answer the question that you're avoiding to ask. It'll bring knowledge, but it won't bring wisdom. It reduces friction, which is good, which creates faster outcomes, better ways to write things, better ways to approach and remove that friction, which is real and that's valuable. But what it can't do is in real leadership, oftentimes it's in the friction where
Mm.
growth happens. It's in those politically charged moments, being able to read a room, being able to look somebody in the eye and say, you're lying to yourself. Let's work on that. You're avoiding these things. And I think if coaches or consultants, even executives or board members are just holding up a mirror or asking the same questions, AI is going to replace that. And it should. And that's okay
Yeah.
because it's about getting better. It's a hard enough job, both being a coach, being an executive, board member, mentor, whatever venue it is through, we need ways to always be getting better. And so I
Mm.
think it's going to disrupt and I think it's going to push people to get better or get replaced. And that's once again, not trying to be harsh. I'm seeing it happen. I sit behind a lot of closed doors with a lot of very high profile leaders. And if I don't hear it 100 times a day, I don't hear it once. It is in product roadmaps. It is in board discussions. It is in people discussions. It is everywhere. And it's a tool. And just like a chainsaw is a tool, that if you learn to use that tool, it's very effective. But if I use it to brush my teeth, I'm not going to get that result. It's a
Yeah.
tool. Got to
Yeah,
figure out how
yeah.
to use it.
I like that analogy a lot. And I heard this, I'm sure you've heard this before of AI isn't not necessarily going to replace people. It's just people using AI are going to replace people that aren't using AI.
Yep.
And I think the idea of reinvention and the idea of personal development and personal growth, both personally and professionally, has never been more important than in today's world. It's always been obviously important to become the best at what you do, but I feel like if you're not, like I was talking to a friend yesterday who doesn't pay for ChatGPT, and I'm like, to me, I feel like it's as important as paying for your electricity at this point.
That's
Like,
a great analogy, Ammar. I agree. It really, yeah, it's very valuable.
I'm curious at this stage, what do you feel is the biggest challenge you're currently facing?
The biggest challenge I'm facing is what I mentioned earlier is how to take what I have done in a very intimate one-on-one way with executives and CEOs and their teams and helping them grow and getting that out to a broader audience and having them really understand that the motives behind that are to once again empty the tank,
Yeah.
important to them. Obviously, if that leads to me working with more great people, that's wonderful, but that's not the driving motive behind it. And so that's a challenge. And there's obviously so many ways to be able to do that, but we have limited resources, time, money, energy. And
Yeah.
so you've got to pick wisely and move aggressively.
I'm curious if you've thought about running some sort of paid ads campaign, whether it's on Meta, whether it's somewhere else, to get it out there more.
I have thought about that, and that is something that we're considering. I've got a
Yeah.
team of people that help me and are more expert at that than myself. And so, yes, that is something that we're absolutely considering.
Have you thought about starting a newsletter?
Yes, that's part of what we're going to be
Nice.
doing is part of once again lifting and promoting the For You Leaders podcast. I've got what I call as a gratitude journal. This is, because I've been doing this for 29 years. Actually, this month is my 30th year. July, I started Dando Advisors
Congrats.
30 years ago. And so I'm sending out to a number of people that have really been integral to my success and part of my journey, this gratitude journal, that it's a daily journal where people can go in and it's broken out in different sections that really helps them turn them into themselves. And really, gratitude is something that lifts all the boats in the harbor. So
I love
there's some other things we're doing, but newsletter is definitely one of the ways we're contemplating doing that.
I'm gonna ask you a difficult question, and the reason I think it's difficult is because it's broad and general. But if you were talking to new entrepreneurs that are starting in 2025, what advice would you have for them to be able to, A, obviously gain traction and success, but also B, use AI effectively in so that they're not being left behind and they're actually modern with the times, if not ahead of the times?
Yeah. So a couple things, and this is a very pertinent question because I've got three daughters and three son-in-laws, and each of them are considering starting a business and doing something, and I'm obviously want to be intimately involved in that to the degree they want me to be. But a couple things. One of just bumper sticker advice would be what I said earlier. Think big, dream big. It's okay. Don't limit your thinking. Start small, consume information, use AI to ask it questions,
Mm,
and move fast and understand that it's a journey. And I talk about the journey to the top, and there's levels in which companies go through, and understand what those things are. And it's success does have a way of breeding failure. And so understand that so you can normalize the journey, because oftentimes I see where people get scared out of the journey and things that are just totally normal. The other piece I would tell them in the AI is when I'm looking at an organization, whether it's working in them, investing in them, there's three things where people are, you've got to be paying attention. One is a thesis. And the thesis is more than just the mission or the vision or the values or the product market fit. The thesis is a simple, like, what is our right to win? Like,
mm,
why do we really have a right to win? And very few people actually answer that question of what is our thesis. And your thesis is evolving, especially in the early days. But get very clear. Companies that don't have a good thesis get packaged up and hopefully sold if they've been venture backed or private equity backed through the preference stack. But if they're not, they just struggle and they run in mud. That's one component. The other one is thinking about your execution, really how to bring that thesis to life through structure. And in the early days, you don't need a lot of structure, a lot of formal meetings, a lot of heaviness. But as you continue, as you grow, oftentimes I see where young entrepreneurs hold on to this idea of, I don't need that structure. It's too heavy. But all your great ideas just get dispersed. So companies that don't execute well, especially in the early days, once again, usually if they're a little bit larger, someone's losing a job, unfortunately.
yeah,
For that. And then the
yeah.
third part is the macroeconomics, the things that we don't really control, but we need to understand and understand what's happening in those markets. And so something's always happening in one of the street. But when I see companies struggle early on or don't have real good clarity about where they're going, I usually take them back and say, let's get clear. And AI can help answer those questions. Like I said, it'll answer the question you're asking. It won't know if you're avoiding the hard questions, but give it the context, let it know about yourself and stuff like that, and let it be a thought partner. It'll help you reflect and hold up that mirror, and that's a powerful way to use
Yeah,
that tool.
yeah, I love that. What is the best way for people to reach out to you to work with you?
Go to the website. It's kirkdando.com. And in there is all kinds of different resources and ways to learn about people I've worked with, what you can expect. The other way is through LinkedIn. I really want to build the community and be able to have people ask, and I'll answer the questions. I'm pretty active in there. And if I can help, like I said, that helper's high is a real thing for me. And play on words, I enjoy getting high.
I love that. Kirk, thank you so much for your time today.
All right. Thank you very much, Ammar. I appreciate your time.
Anytime. So that wraps up another insightful episode of Founders Future. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to go to kirkdando.com. You can also reach out to him on LinkedIn. It'll be linked around here, so it'll be pretty easy to find. And if you are a business owner and you're looking to scale your business and you really want to enhance your sales and marketing efforts, specifically if you're a coach, consultant, or an agency, and you want to understand what took us from $0 to $30 million in 26 months, visit closers.io to discover how we can support your growth journey. Until then, keep on climbing.